Hi everyone, in this video we're going to talk about deploying a Statamic site. The one thing to bear in mind when you're thinking about which host to use is that Statamic runs on Laravel. Now in terms of getting Laravel working on a hosting environment, there are definitely a few differences. Firstly, you typically need to run a set of commands after each deploy, and these commands do things like they flush the cache, maybe generate some assets like minified CSS using Webpack. And also the more difficult thing is that Statamic needs to be deployed in the public folder. Most hosts use a public _HTML folder, and more awkwardly, they don't really let you change it, or you need to maybe create a symlink or speak to support to change it. So off the bat, it can be difficult if you've got an existing hosting solution that doesn't work with Laravel or isn't geared towards Laravel. It can be difficult to make it work smoothly with Statamic. So after a little bit of discussion on the Statamic Discord channel, I actually decided that as much of a pain as it is to change hosts, I think using a specific host that's geared towards Laravel makes using Statamic much easier and much less frustrating. The two main hosts that are recommended tend to be Laravel Forge, which is built by Taylor Otwell himself, who's the guy that created Laravel, so that's always a good thing. And secondly, Ploy, which is a newer hosting platform. I've actually tried both, and Forge is fine, but Ploy has a few advantages around the user interface, and it also lets you log into phpMyAdmin, so you can create like SQL tables on there and things. And that makes it a lot easier if you're also using other sites. So for example, I came from the Perch content management system, and for that I needed to have phpMyAdmin to administer some of the MySQL tables. So Ploy is a more all-in-one solution, and I think it also has a nicer UI as I make this. So I thought the easiest way to show you how to get this working is if I create my own free trial. So I'm going to be going through everything that you're going to go through, and we'll deploy a dummy Statamic site. So here I'm going to just sign up to a free trial, get started. Welcome to Ploy. So Ploy provide like a wizard to get going. So let's go through this. Link Git provider. In my case, I use Bitbucket, link Bitbucket. Okay, so that's linked. So let's go back to my dashboard, add a service provider. So this is where we want to link to DigitalOcean. So that's the second thing to discuss. I guess Ploy isn't strictly a hosting provider. They're more like a hosting service provider. So what that means is that your site will actually be hosted on something like DigitalOcean tends to be the most popular one, especially when talking to people on the Discord channel in Statamic. And then Ploy is like a layer on top, which runs a load of commands and gives you a nice GUI so that you don't need to system administrate DigitalOcean yourself. So let's go ahead and say link service provider, or link server provider, sorry. So here we've got DigitalOcean. I think DigitalOcean and Linode tend to be the most popular or the most recommended with Statamic. So I'm going to say DigitalOcean. So let's see if I can use my existing DigitalOcean account to link to this. If not, I'll create a new dummy one. What we need to do now is we need to link DigitalOcean to Ploy. You can do this if you go to the left-hand column and then go down to the bottom left, which is API. And here we need an API key. So I'm going to generate a new token. So I'm going to call this Ploy demo because this is just a Ploy account that I'm creating for this screencast. Generate token. Now we can hover and click copy. Let's go back and paste that in here. I'm going to call this DigitalOcean Ploy demo. Okay, let's see what we need to do next. Go back to dashboard. So we've got a server provider. Now that we've linked to DigitalOcean, we actually need to create a server. Create server, DigitalOcean. And here we can just select the credentials that we've linked. Ploy will just generate a random name here. And we can leave the server type as is. With the server plan, I find that the first one is fine for my usage. Maybe you might need to select a higher one if you've got a client that gets lots of visitors. And with the server region, you want to choose the one that's closest to you. So I'm going to choose London. And this is all fine. And let's click Create Server. So what this is doing is it's using DigitalOcean's API to create a server on DigitalOcean for you rather than going through DigitalOcean's graphical user interface. This will take a bit of time. You can see progress at the moment is 0%. So go and make a cup of tea or something. Okay, we're back after a break. I think that took about 20 minutes in total. At this point, you'll be emailed details of the server, and you should definitely make note of the sudo password. I find the best thing to do is just copy all this and dump it in like a password manager such as 1Password. Next thing, let's just run through a few different settings in Ploy, which I recommend that you either change or set up. Firstly, if you go to your profile, so in the top right and then profile, I'd recommend that you set up two-factor authentication. You really don't want someone breaking into your server. And then if you go to settings, you may want to change like the newsletter and the email settings. I personally like dark mode. I find it a little bit more readable. So I'm just going to save that now. And if we go back to the dashboard, you can see that we've done everything we need to. So let's create a site. If I choose servers from the left-hand menu and then the server name that it's given us. At this point, I'm going to add a domain that I'd like to link up. If you click Advanced Settings, which I've just done here, you can see that by default it puts the web directory in public. As I was talking about in the beginning of the video, this is like a Laravel thing, so most hosts will put it in public_HTML, but of course Statamic won't work that way. So this is a good default, and I'm just going to add the site here. And you can see here it says no repository link to it. So if I click this, and we want to select git install repository, provide a Bitbucket, Ploy demo. And here is the first thing that we need to make sure we do, which is install composer dependencies. Again, another reason why we want to choose a host like Ploy when it has these things built in. Install, and after it's installed the repository, it will recommend a few different commands to you. Again, this is based on like a Laravel environment thing. So we can add these. I'm going to add these to the deploy script. And here you can see what's happening when it deploys the site. So it's going into the domain directory, pull in from Git, composer installing. So let's see what happens when we just click deploy now. This actually failed. Why did it fail? And I've just paused the video to Google why this failed. And what I did is I copied the error that came out of this console. So this is why this console is quite useful as a hosting tool to understand why things work or why things don't work. And I Googled this error message, which was access denied for user root at localhost. And I think this was to do with the PHP artisan migrate command, which we don't actually need for Statamic. So I'm going to remove that and click save and then try to deploy again. And you can see a log of all the deployments here. So this one failed. So let's wait for the next one to finish. And it says application deployed. And if we scroll down to the logs, you can see that this is successful, whereas the previous one failed. If I click edit environment, and let's change the app URL. So let's say HTTPS, and then save that. We want to add a few more things to the deploy script. So I'm going to paste these in. We want to first of all run npm run production, which will run Laravel mix, which will process all your CSS and JavaScript so it's minified. And then I'm going to add 3 more commands in, which just helps to clear caches and optimize the site. Then click save. One thing I forgot to do is in the environment. So if we click edit environment again, we should change this to production. Save that. The next thing we want to do is connect up the domain. So what you need to do is go into your domain provider. In my case, I use Gandhi, and then we go to DNS records. And at this point, we're going to need the IP address of Ploy. So if I go back to Ploy, you can find the IP address in the top left. If you click this, it will copy it to your keyboard. And what I want to do is change the @ value on the A record. So I'm going to change the IP address to my demo server. Save that. I've also got written in a note to add a wildcard record. I can't remember why that's needed, but let's do that. Add the IP address, and let's give it an asterisk, a wildcard. Okay, so that's that. And let's change the www value to my lovely domain name. Okay, if everything's connected correctly, we should be able to add the SSL. So if I go to SSL and accept the defaults, let's say add certificate. This gray bar means it's trying, and it's green, so that's good. That means it's been added successfully. It doesn't seem to be working yet. Let's just try a few more things. So I've paused the video and tried to run this again. with the new commands that I added. This is one thing I forgot to mention. You'll need to run npm install to begin with. So let's save that because nothing has been installed yet. Let's deploy. As you can see, there's lots of gotchas getting it running for the first time. It's taking a bit of time here. And if I scroll down, this one was successful. So now I should be able to remove the npm install, save that. And let's just run it again to make sure that that's working fine. Once this is set up, we'll never need to do this again. Don't worry, it's just the first time. Okay, that's finished. If I scroll down, this is now successful without the npm install. So we can just leave it as is now, and it should run like a dream in future. But this still isn't working. But I think this is a DNS issue. I think it hasn't successfully propagated yet. One tip I have for you is if we copy this, if I open this up in browser stack and open this, any old browser will do. And if I go to crayon.1 here, you can see that this is successfully installed and Statamic is working. So it must be a DNS issue on my end. So now that we've got the site working correctly on ploy and deployed, final few things. One thing I would do if you're not too worried about things slipping through the net or what have you, is instead of manually deploying this, so instead of going to the button in the top right and clicking deploy now, we can get this to automatically deploy whenever we push to our Git repository. And the way you can do this is if you go to settings. Oh, while I'm here, this is another great thing. You can enable a test domain. So I wouldn't even need to connect this to my real domain. I could just test it out without connecting the DNS up. But what we want is, maybe it's not in settings. Repository, that's what it's in. Enable quick deploy. So as it says, when you push to your installed branch, ploy will run your deploy script for you. So this means that we don't need to have deploy open at all. We can just push and it will work. So let's try that. I'm going to go into this demo repo and just drag it in here. And let's search for something to change. This is the description of the type of content. And let's search for index. Okay, let's try this. Just try p hello. So I'm putting a new paragraph text in there. I'm going to save this now. I'm now going to go into terminal and push this up to my Git repo. So git status, yeah, I've changed that. Git add, git commit, test. Okay, git push. So now what will happen is ploy will automatically deploy this in the background, and it normally takes, maybe 30 seconds or something. So just to prove it, I'm going to stay here and wait for a few seconds. Let's try now. Hello. Yeah, you can see it's pushed it up. So this, where we're at now, is the dream, where you can just change content, push it up, and it will automatically be deployed. Of course, this is only doing it one way. There's a whole other thing for what happens if the production site changes and you need to get that content down. And that's a situation where you would either have a pro license, which includes a Statamic flavor of Git, which will automatically commit things for you, or you can SSH into the server and pull things down yourself, which I'll cover in a different video. But if you're just getting started with Statamic, and maybe, I don't know, you've got a personal site like on a solo license, which is a free license for Statamic, and you just wanted to work locally and push things up, then this is the way to go. Once you've got this set up, it's really easy once you've got it set up. I know getting it going is quite tough when you're not sure what you're doing, but hopefully these videos have helped you get there. Once you're there, it's fine.